Predlagam, da prisluhnemo inovativni in resnični zgodbi o SAP BW in SAP Business Suite na SAP HANA. Dame in gospodje, Corrie Steffens.
Dobar dan. You might be wondering why you're looking at the map of Hawaii. Well, let me explain. In general, it is assumed that HANA stands for High Performance Analytical Appliances, also known as Hasso's new architecture. It also happens to be that Hasso Plattner, the co-founder of SAP, has a house on Hawaii. It is overlooking the Hana Bay. Maybe this is where the inspiration for this new in-memory computing technology originates from. So, my name is Corrie Steffens. I'm a business information manager at the University of Amsterdam. And for the next 40 minutes or so, I'll be taking you on a short trip along a fast way road to HANA. What's on the program? Our trip will lead us along the reasons why we migrated to HANA in the first place. Then I'll explain you how we did it and how we got there. I will show you what we found when we arrived at HANA. The next thing, I'll be sharing with you some experiences of our using of HANA on the Suite and BW so far. What were the most important things we learned along the way? And last but not least, what are we going to use this bright new technology furthermore of? As you can see, we started our trip in August 2013, and we arrived at HANA May the 6th, 2004. At the end of the day, we were one of the first adapters in Europe to use HANA on both SAP BW and the Suite, and we were even the first customer in Holland to skip over. So, the HANA adventure took place at the University of Amsterdam. This is where our trip begins, a short introduction to the University of Amsterdam.
That's Amsterdam diversity. Cosmopolitan city. It contains 180 nationalities. You can see all the different cultures when you take a walk on the street.
The first lecture was held in 1632 because the city wanted to enlighten their people and bring young people up to look at the international trade that made Amsterdam rich.
Well, of course, the University of Amsterdam attracts a lot of international students. They help us also to shape the Amsterdam of the future.
Well, I wanted to study abroad, and I heard that the University of Amsterdam does excellent in the international and European rankings for universities. So I did my research, and here I am in Amsterdam. It turned out to be the perfect school for me.
Our teachers stimulate us very much to work independently, and we are encouraged to form our own vision and opinion, which I think is really important.
The University of Amsterdam is a research-intensive university, and we find it important to make a connection between this research and our teaching programs. Students participate in research, and that way they experience that knowledge is ever expanding and continually changes.
The scientists in our community are given the opportunity to do groundbreaking research, to actively support a number of what we call key research priority areas, and they enjoy international recognition.
So for a few more words on the UvA, as we call it, we founded 382 years ago. We have almost 32,000 Students were one of the main employers in Amsterdam, employing over 8,000 people. We have a turnover of 600 million euros. That makes us one of the largest general universities in Europe. We form a collaboration with the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and we do not only use SAP for our prime processes, we use the student information system of Oracle PeopleSoft Solutions. As you can see, as you can see here, our SAP landscape is only simple. We have, oh, it disappeared. What did I do? There it is again. We only have one OTA street, just one client. We don't run 24/7. We don't have high availability requirements. The usual of SAP's main functionalities are in place. We use BW for our management information reports. We use PI as an information broker, solution manager, the federated portal, on top of our suite. And within our suite, we use the project administration, the financial modules, material management, HR. And we're putting into place the payroll in 2015. So that's for our SAP landscape. So why HANA? We were wondering. What were our main reasons to ponder over? Our hardware was at the end of its life cycle for over more than 4 years, and therefore no longer in maintenance. We had to do something either way. Our end users were no longer satisfied with the system's performance, and not only to mention the unfriendly screens. This called for an infrastructure project. So what were our choices? Would we roll in some new hardware and continue the old-fashioned way? Or should we move over to HANA? Was this our moment? We made some more considerations. We tried to set up a strong and solid business case for both BW and the suite. For BW, performance could be a reason. However, we already had invested quite a lot of in fine-tuning our report performance, so we didn't really expect any benefit from there. By creating aggregates and caching our reports, we were already working in memory, so we might already have a HANA-like performance. We created aggregates and caching. On the other hand, if data load performance improves by HANA, then our time window to load data would expand. Our data warehouse is filled from data from SAP and non-SAP sources during the nights, and our nights were getting a bit too short. Also, for the suite, we tried to figure out what HANA could offer us, if choosing for HANA could be justified. We looked into that matter with the help of the Business Scenario Recommendations for SAP Business Suite Powered by HANA report. Unfortunately, we found no real driver there. On the other hand, HANA Live would offer us direct access to real-time information, which would facilitate our operational reporting. Was this enough to choose for HANA? It didn't look like we had a real solid business case. We did some more consideration. Whoop. HANA technology is expensive. We assumed, though, that with all the rapid technology developments, the cost, like all new technology, would drop in time, in the near future, perhaps. Secondly, we aimed for low-priced licenses. SAP made us an offer we couldn't refuse, and it happened to be a reasonably good deal. SAP HANA is the future platform for SAP, so all their effort and energy is putting into developing it. So if we would step over now, we could really benefit from these developments. At the UVA, the policy is to replace the hardware every 5 years. So if we didn't do it now, we had to wait for another 5 years. HANA is an innovative technology, so if we would choose for HANA now, we would be a forerunner. For a university, we thought that would be nice. We also think we can achieve advantages in the field of managing and developing the systems. No BW aggregates anymore, no caching. It would really simplify modeling. So we called a bluff. We said, let's move over to HANA and let's begin. It would solve performance issues on BW, and it would provide on-demand analytics. Bear in mind, however, that HANA has far more potential beyond the scope of the ERP SAP system. Please bear in mind that we didn't just migrate to HANA. What we also did was change our infrastructural landscape altogether. We not only moved our database platform to HANA, we also did we changed our operating system from Sun Solaris Unix to Linux. The application layer, the SAP application layer, we didn't put on solid hardware anymore, but we moved it over to virtual machines. Our portal, our federated portal, didn't stay. It did stay on Oracle, but it moved to completely new hardware. So how did we proceed? How did we start? As you might know, the HANA hardware comes in T-shirt sizes. You have small, medium, large. So we first had to determine which size of the HANA box we needed. There's a standard SAP transaction that can help you with it. It turned out that we had to go for the medium plus. The advantage of a medium plus is that it can be enlarged quite easily to a 1 terabyte machine. So we were actually preparing for the future. The size we chose for enabled us to put everything on HANA boxes, so our development, acceptance, sandbox, and production system. This is a luxury we could afford because we are only a small enterprise in SAP terms, and not all the large companies do so. Shell, for example, they only put their hot data on HANA because otherwise it wouldn't be affordable yet. It would be too expensive. Yeah. Anyway, before we could start whatsoever, we had to upgrade both the BW system as well as the suite. BW had to be upgraded from 7.0 to 7.3, and our suite, we upgraded it to enhancement package 7 on the NetWeaver 7.4 platform. Fortunately, all our systems were already Unicode compliant. So what did we do next? We had to find a partner. Whom did we do the job with? After the upgrades had been done, we continued our work by setting up a mixed project team for the HANA migration. We joined our internal UVA forces with that of an external partner. The partner of our choice was Intense. And you have to have an external partner because SAP demands that the OS and the database migration is carried out by a certified partner. HP facilitated the hardware that is essential to run the HANA platform from. And since we were one of the first customers in Europe to migrate to HANA, we kept in close contact with SAP all the time. We put up the mixed team, so what roles were in our project team? As you can see, there were quite many. We had a project manager, a test manager, the sub-certified partners, and all kind of hardware and technical people. We had 10 to 30 application testers, and most of the people within the project team came from within the UvA. The project leader was a UvA person, and this is quite handy. It gave us a lot of advantage because the UvA people, they know the processes, they know the organization, and they know the business. So our external partner, Intense and HP, they did merely, they carried out the activities that SAP demands to be carried out by certified consultants. So how did we approach our BW migration? As pointed out before, we are the first, well, there isn't a lot of experience available yet in Europe, so we wanted to make sure that we didn't get into trouble later on in the project, so we started with our sandbox migration. Our sandbox is a standalone environment which replicates the acceptance environment. If things went wrong, then we wouldn't endanger our production system. At first, we started with preparing the new infrastructure, configuring and putting into place the virtual machines, and so on. This took about 9 weeks. After migrating our sandboxes, the acceptance, development, and production environment followed successfully, all within a period of almost 40 days. That means 10 days each. Per system, the actual database migration to HANA takes place in only 1 day. The other 9 days you need for the pre- and post-migration steps, as well as testing your system. We encountered some minor issues ranging from PDF, Excel, reporting, export in our portal, to missing some indices and empty master data. But all this could be solved in only little time. I can imagine, as you can see behind on the schedule, that your production, the downtime of 9 days of your production system sounds rather frightening, but since the BW system for the UvA is not its prime business process for our end users, it was inconvenient, but it was not devastating. So after the BW, we continued with the migration of the suite on HANA. For the suite, the preparations, mainly infrastructural again, amounted up to 5 weeks. Then, in a period of almost 10 weeks, we migrated the 4 environments. Here as well, we started with a migration of the sandbox. In this migration, we used for thoroughly testing the SAP's functionalities. As before, because we were one of the early adapters, we wanted to make sure we didn't end up with time-consuming issues later on in the project. And we have no modifications, and we only have some custom code. We didn't want to take any risk. We didn't want to leave it to fate. Fortunately, we didn't we didn't find any SAP HANA related issue. The migration of our development system was more challenging. This had nothing to do with any technical issue whatsoever. It was more of a logistic nature, since our project team was scattered all around the globe. One of us was working from Dubai, another one from Spain, some from within the Netherlands, but not on premises. And it didn't turn out turned out very complicated that way. So we learned from that afterwards for the acceptance and production system. We kept the project team together, working from the same place. What you're now looking at is the current outline of the UvA system architecture and infra areas. So as you can see, our SAP system is talking like to a complete information world. And we count over 30 interfaces from our SAP system to the outer world. You can imagine that we took the time in our acceptance system to put all our testing efforts into testing and validating these interfaces. Actually, we found out that HANA was doing a better and more accurate job. Finally, we migrated our production system. Because of everything we learned along the way, and with the aid of some helpful tools, which I will talk about in a few minutes, we accomplished this in less than 3 days. This means you can actually migrate your production system within a weekend, minimizing the downtime of your production system, though you will be working day and night if you do so. What turned out to be very helpful is the cookbook. We couldn't have done these migrations without the help of our friends at SAP. SAP has published a cookbook on the internet in which every step you have to take to migrate your system to HANA is mentioned. If you read the cookbook and if you read the notes, the BW migration turns out to be a piece of cake. It's quite easily, actually. There's also a cookbook published for the suite, for the migration of the suite. It's very useful as well, but for this migration, the cookbook alone for the UvA wasn't sufficient. We had to put in some specific UvA ingredients. Because of the changes we made in our infrastructure, we had to open a lot of infrastructural doors to clear the way for the information to be spread. So we put together an extended go-live script. We added bits and pieces with every environment we migrated to HANA, previous to the production system, as we went along. Before I will reveal what improvement HANA has brought to us, I'd like to share with you some experiences of some of our project members. So let's have a look at them.
We want to be part of a very important technological development in SAP, taking advantage of all the HANA optimizations that will come within the next few years, and that already are there. We started late fall. We first did the SAP BW system, and we got a lot of success with it. The project went well, within time, within budget, and in the end, the performance was even better than we had expected it to be before we started the project.
We were curious whether or not HANA had something for us to win, since if you cache your reports, you might already have a HANA-like performance, because the HANA technology is an in-memory technology. And if you put your query results in your cache, you already are working in memory. So we were doubting whether or not HANA would have profits for the University of Amsterdam on that side. So during our project, we monitored we followed the performance of our reports in the back end as well as in the front end, and after the results afterwards show that that HANA, although we were thinking that the profits would be minimal, did offer us some benefits.
Don't underestimate testing. It's an open door, as we say in Dutch, but it's really important to start testing. With a database migration like HANA, you think it's a typical back-end basis process. So after migration, you test if all data is still available, and then you should be ready. But that's not the case. Please test the front end as well. All the reports, you have to drill down like you normally do to test if everything is still working. We had a few issues, not really big issues. All were nodes available on the SAP marketplace, so it was not a big issue. But if you don't test it well, you will get problems afterwards. Then after project, we started to test the differences between the report performance before and afterwards. Difference was quite well. We had a load performance difference of 20 to 80% faster than normally. That means that our night, normally the loading during night was from 9 in the evening till 8 in the morning. Now we can do the loads till 4 in the night. That means that you still have a few hours left to do more loading during the night or extra loading. For example, our students, all the information of our students, we're loading it once a month at the moment, and after the HANA migration we could go back to once a week, and that was great.
So these are our results for the BW system. You can see them here, but before that I'd like to say something more about our upgrade of our BW system, because it brought some risks. Some of our content is developed in outdated BW technology, and there were no guarantees that this outdated technology would still stand up and working after the HANA migration. But fortunately it did, and we were very surprised to find out that SAP was handling this quite intelligent. We measured the front end and the back end query performance time, and our BW reports are executed in a confederated portal. And on forehand, when we started our BW project in 2006, our end users were promised Google-like performance. So within the HANA traject, we didn't promise them everything, because the performance of the reports is always too slow if you compare it with Google-like performance. As you might know yourself, for a data warehouse, Google-like performance is unrealistic. So nevertheless, HANA improved our BW reporting system, especially the report navigation, drilling down, putting in some extra characteristics, taking them out of the report. It speeded up to an average of 4.5 times quicker than before HANA came into our world. And on the back end, the loading times improved 3.5 times. So our end users, they told us they really noticed a difference after HANA was introduced at the UvA. So for the suite results, we did a full migration. We upgraded well before the start of the migration phase. And already after the first sandbox migrations tests, our test team pointed out to us that the system was really responding quicker. Portal performance tangibly bettered, and we think that the improvement made here is the sum of both HANA and the infrastructural changes that took place. Also here we compared performance before and afterwards, and we did that on a transactional level. We used the workload monitor, a substandard transaction, to require our data. So let's look take a look at these results a bit closer. We categorized the improvement factors into categories that we think reflects the end user's perception. As we were looking at performance, we looked to the system's performance as a whole, so we made no distinction between SAP transactions, reports, or batch jobs. And after a month, having HANA into place, we compared this data with the data we retrieved from the system before HANA. And it shows us that 77% of the system activities have improved. And with an improvement of a factor of 2 or more, 42% of the system activities have improved. And there's 12.8% of the activities that have really speeded up. So our end users are left with a feeling that the system responds quicker. Among one of the substandard transactions to display project plan cost line items and a report that visualizes the plan actual variance report, the improvement of both master data management transaction to transactional data activities have improved. There are 2 substandard reports that we use that have speeded up a lot by a factor of even 78 times quicker than before. So what did we learn along the way? I will go into that by every step of the way, the pre-migration, the migration, and the post-migration phase. And obviously for us, the network plan, a solid network plan, was very important. Part of the infrastructure went to virtual machines. So not only the sizing of the HANA box was important for us, but also the sizing of the VMs. And that turned out to be quite a puzzle. Here, the sizing reports came in handy. Remember that HANA costs a lot of money, and you don't want to migrate too much data to your system. It's a waste of space you could use for better purposes. So clean up your garbage, please. Put into place a sub-solution manager. It's a must if you come into if you get into trouble later on. And do not underestimate the importance of testing your systems. Keep in mind that testing acquires appropriate data. So if your data is polluted or neglected in your acceptance system, make a system of that copy well in advance of your migration project. We took it into our project, and we took rather a risk with that. It consumed some of the resources we could have used better, and if the system copy would have failed, then I wouldn't have wanted to imagine what would happen to our project. So we took quite a risk here. During the migration phase, we started off with a sandbox migration. It was a must. Every SAP configuration is unique, but we also changed the whole world around our SAP system. We use different database technology, a different operating system, a different infrastructure of the application layer. So I'm sure you can imagine that we wanted to make sure that everything would turn out fine. Also here, large tables can become a nuisance. For example, we learned only afterwards that we migrated a table, our BW idocs table containing 120 gigabytes, because it contained information from 2006 onward. We never cleansed it. it's a waste of precious space. During the migration of the suite, we got stuck because of a large table. We needed to cut it up in pieces before we could continue our migration. So housekeeping is of the utmost importance. Clean up your large tables as much as possible. Post-migration, again, housekeeping. For our BW system, it wasn't well customized after migration, and it made our system go slower and slower and slower. So only after activating the house cleaning jobs, our problems were solved. We were afraid that in the BW system, our process change would malfunction because it's built on old technology and fall apart, so we couldn't load our data anymore. We were surprised that the system dealt with the. We were surprised that SAP dealt with it in a very intelligent way. The superfluous steps of making aggregates, and they were just skipped. So our process change kept on working as they did. Only some of the steps were skipped. For our end users, nothing really changed. The system felt and looked the same way as before. And in every migration, we learned that the portal migration turned out to be the most complex. It kept us. It took quite some effort every time to put it back on running again. To get it up and running again. So to wrap it all up, the migration itself is swift and easy. It can be done quick if you don't make any infrastructural changes. It's really fast. If you make infrastructural changes, think them out well in advance. We migrated our 8 systems to HANA in less than 18 weeks. And note that if you have enough resources in your company, and if they can work long hours, you can do it even quicker. Okay. To make your migration a success, migrate your sandbox first. And we strongly advise you to keep out the red tape. What do I mean by this? We really benefited from the short lines of communication within our organization. Everybody we needed outside of the project team to solve little problems were readily at hand. We don't have to go through all kinds of managerial desks for approval, and this saved a tremendous amount of time. Make sure you have a portal and a migration crack on board, and SAP can help you with keeping your system tidy. Make sure you put into place the substandard housekeeping jobs. As developments around HANA are fast, try to go for the very latest version. And last but not least, we think that performance improvement is not exclusively caused by HANA, but also probably up until a certain amount by the infrastructure changes we made. Remember, though, that people get used to velocity fast, but they never become accustomed to waiting, however. As you have heard, HANA has certainly something to offer to you, but up until what extent completely depends on the configuration of your SAP landscape. Is this where, for the UvA, our HANA story ends? Is this everything HANA has to offer to us? No, fortunately, it doesn't. We can use this powerful in-memory computing technology for other purposes. Let's look at what the university is and what it does. We educate. Whom do we educate? We educate our students. But at the moment, we only know so little about how students approach their studies nowadays, and this is where HANA comes in. If we could only analyze the behavior of students, the quality of the teaching materials we use, the use of the digital learning environment and the working environment of our students, and the quality of our test times, if we put the academic process into it and we wrap it all together, this would give our institution more understanding of our students. This is the field of learning analytics. Learning analytics goes about collecting, analyzing, reporting of data on students and their surroundings in order to better understand their educational pursuit and the environment in which it takes place. We want to be able to improve that. This means really big data. We are convinced at the UvA that the HANA technology can be of a great help in this area to make, as the former speaker said, make the big data smart. Ellen Burke, working at the University of Amsterdam, will now shed some light on this.
I work within the Innovation Work Group, and that the Innovation Work Group is responsible for bringing in innovative new ideas to these services. Today, I wish to talk about the relationship between learning analytics and SAP HANA within our organisation. But first, I need to give you a little bit of context. I have a number of hats to do with learning analytics. At the University of Amsterdam, I work within a focus group which is bringing in learning analytics services and helping disseminate knowledge. At the national level, I'm working within a special interest group at SURF on learning analytics. I'm a member of a core team. And at the international level, I work with the Apereo Foundation, which has 140 or so universities as members, as a community officer for the Learning Analytics Initiative. SAP HANA is interesting at UvA and perhaps later at the Hogeschool School of Amsterdam, because we can use the data from the SIS systems, student administration systems, and pull that together with activity information about students. That is the activity they do within our learning management systems and other systems are online. And we can merge those data together, use algorithms to predict student failure, use algorithms to look at the sequence of courses that students should use to optimize their study success. We can start to look at the relationship with the activity and the student information towards adaptive learning. So we can leverage a lot if we use these sort of technologies. We're at the very beginning of experimenting with that, and it's great fun.
So as for now, this is where our trip ends. I kindly thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I'll try to answer them to my best effort. Hvala lepa.